The knock on my office door came at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I know the exact time because I was staring at my computer screen, wondering why I was still at Hartwell and Associates Insurance when everyone else had gone home hours ago. The building was empty except for the security guard downstairs, and I hadn't heard footsteps in the hallway. "Come in," I called out, expecting maybe the janitor or security doing rounds. The man who entered wasn't either. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with the kind of lean build that suggested military training. Dark hair, cold gray eyes, and a face that had seen things most people only watch in movies. He wore a simple black jacket, and when he moved, I caught a glimpse of something metallic under his left arm. "Nathan Hartwell?" His accent was slight but noticeable. Eastern European, maybe Russian. "That's me." I leaned back in my chair, trying to look casual while my heart started hammering. "We're closed, but if you need insurance, I am not here for insurance." He stepped closer and I saw his hand move toward his jacket. "I am here because someone wants you dead." The words hit me like a physical blow. I should have panicked, should have reached for my phone or tried to run. Instead, I found myself strangely calm, like this moment had been inevitable. "Let me guess," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "My wife Sandra sent you." His eyebrows rose slightly. "You are not surprised. Should I be?" I kept my hands visible on the desk. 3 affairs that I know of, gambling debts she thinks I don't know about, and she increased my life insurance 6 months ago without telling me. The only surprise is that it took this long. The man, I was already thinking of him as a professional, studied me with those cold eyes. "She said you would beg, cry perhaps, offer money you do not have." "Well, she's wrong about the money part." I opened my desk drawer slowly, keeping eye contact. "How much is she paying you?" 50,000. Half now, half when job is complete." I pulled out my checkbook and set it on the desk. "I'll give you 100,000 right now, plus another 50 if you tell me exactly what she said when she hired you." For the first time since he'd entered, the man looked genuinely surprised. "You wish to pay me more than your wife to not end you?" "I wish to pay you more than my wife to tell me the truth about what she's planning." I picked up my pen. "What's your name?" "Victor." He seemed to consider something. "Victor Kozlov." "Nice to meet you, Victor. I'm going to write you a check for $100,000. In return, you're going to play me whatever recording you made of my wife hiring you, because a professional like you always records the client for insurance purposes, and then you're going to disappear. Deal?" Victor stared at me for a long moment, then slowly reached into his jacket. Instead of a tool, he pulled out a small digital recorder. "Your wife," he said, "is not a nice woman." Victor set the recorder on my desk and pressed play. Sandra's voice filled the office, clear and unmistakable. "I need it to look like a robbery gone wrong," she was saying. "He works late most nights. The building has cameras, but they're old, and the angles are bad on the 3rd floor. You understand the fee structure?" Victor's voice, professional and detached. 25 now, 25 when it's done. But I want him to know why. I want him scared before he dies. 12 years I've been married to that boring little man, and I'm done pretending." My hands clenched into fists. 12 years. We'd been married 12 years, and she was calling them pretense. "He has life insurance?" Victor asked on the recording. $5 million. Double indemnity for violent death. I increased it 6 months ago. Sandra's voice carried a note of pride, like she was showing off her cleverness. "And you are beneficiary? His only beneficiary. No kids, no close family. It's all mine when he's gone." Victor stopped the recording and looked at me. "There is more, but you understand the situation now." I finished writing the check and slid it across the desk. "There's your 100,000. Now tell me about the insurance policy." "What about it?" "She said she increased it 6 months ago. I never signed any paperwork for that." Victor's expression darkened. "You think she forged your signature?" "I know she did. I handle insurance for a living, Victor. I know what paperwork I've signed and what I haven't." I leaned forward. "Which means this isn't just homicide for hire, it's fraud too. Your wife is more foolish than I thought. My wife is desperate." I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the empty parking lot. "She owes money to people who don't accept late payments. The gambling problem started 2 years ago, but she's been hiding the debts from me." "How much does she owe?" 400,000 last time I checked her hidden accounts. I turned back to Victor. "She thinks I don't know about the offshore credit cards or the cash withdrawals. But I'm an accountant, Victor. Numbers don't lie to me the way people do. Victor pocketed the check. What do you want me to do? I want you to help me prove what she's done. I want recordings of her talking about the homicide, evidence of the insurance fraud, everything we need to put her away for a very long time. And then you disappear with your money, and I make sure Sandra gets exactly what she deserves. Victor considered this. Why should I trust you? How do I know you will not betray me to police? Because, I said, meeting his eyes, you're the only honest person in this whole mess. You told me the truth when you could have just finished me off. My wife has been lying to me for years, planning to end me for months, and probably sleeping with half the men in this city. You offered me a fair trade. My life for the truth about my wife. I respect that. You are a strange man, Nathan Hartwell. I'm a man who's tired of being lied to. I sat back down. So, do we have a deal? Victor smiled for the first time since he'd entered my office. It wasn't a pleasant smile, but it was genuine. We have deal. But first, you should know something about your wife's debts. What about them? She does not owe money to casino or bookmaker. Victor's expression grew serious. She owes money to her boyfriend. He runs illegal sports betting operation. Very dangerous man. My stomach dropped. Boyfriend? Marcus Webb, operates out of downtown warehouse. Your wife has been seeing him for 8 months. The debts are real, but they are personal. Personal how? She borrowed money to impress him. Expensive gifts, trips, apartment he uses for business. When she could not pay back, he suggested solution. Victor tapped the recorder. Homicide was his idea. I know this because he hired me before, for other clients who could not pay. The room seemed to spin around me. Sandra wasn't just cheating and planning homicide, she was in love with the man who'd suggested ending me. How many other clients? I asked quietly. 3 that I know of, all made to look like accidents or robberies. All had large insurance policies. Webb takes percentage of payout. Jesus Christ. I put my head in my hands. They've done this before. Yes, and they will do again, unless stopped. I looked up at Victor. Then we stopped them. Victor and I spent the next 2 hours planning. He had more resources than I'd expected. Surveillance equipment, contacts in various agencies, and a surprisingly detailed knowledge of federal law enforcement procedures. First, he said, spreading papers across my desk, we need more evidence. Recording is good start, but not enough for conviction. What else do we need? Financial records showing money flow between your wife and Webb, evidence of previous homicides, proof of insurance fraud. Victor pulled out a laptop. I have some information already. The screen showed a complex web of financial transactions, shell companies, and insurance payouts. 3 names were highlighted in red: David Chen, Robert Martinez, and Jennifer Thompson. Webb's previous victims? Yes, all married to people who owed him money. All died within 6 months of taking large insurance policies. All policies had beneficiaries who paid Webb 40% of payout. I stared at the screen, feeling sick. How long has this been going on? 2 years, maybe longer. Webb is careful, spreads operations across multiple states, but he made mistake with your wife. What mistake? Victor smiled that cold smile again. He hired me. I keep detailed records of all contracts, insurance, for my own protection. You have evidence of the other homicides? I have everything. Recordings, financial transfers, even video surveillance from some meetings. Victor closed the laptop. But I need guarantee of protection before I turn over to authorities. What kind of guarantee? Witness protection, new identity, enough money to disappear permanently. Victor leaned back in his chair. Your wife's boyfriend has connections in many places. If he learns I betrayed him, how much money are we talking about? $2 million, plus expenses for new documents, relocation, set up in different country. I did quick mental math. Between my business accounts, personal savings, and liquid investments, I could manage it. Barely. Done, I said. But I want to be there when they arrest Sandra. That can be arranged. Victor stood up. But first, we need more evidence. Your wife must incriminate herself further. How? You will tell her you are working late again tomorrow night. Same office, same time. She will call me to confirm assassination is proceeding. I will record conversation and arrange meeting to collect final payment. And then we contact FBI. I have agent who owes me favor. Agent Sarah Mitchell, White Collar Crimes Division. She has been investigating Webb for months but lacks evidence for prosecution. I felt a surge of hope for the first time in hours. She'll take the case? She will take the case. Webb is high priority target. Evidence of serial homicide for insurance fraud will make her career. What about Sandra? Your wife will be arrested for conspiracy to commit homicide, insurance fraud, and accessory to multiple homicides. Victor's expression was grim. She will spend rest of life in prison. Good. The word came out harder than I'd intended. She deserves whatever she gets. Victor studied me carefully. You are angry. I'm furious. 12 years of marriage, Victor. 12 years of thinking we were building a life together, and she was planning to homicide me for money. I stood up and paced to the window again. Do you know what the worst part is? What? I still love her. Even knowing what she's done, what she's planning, part of me still loves the woman I thought she was. I turned back to Victor. Does that make me weak? It makes you human. Victor gathered his papers, but it also makes you dangerous to her. Love can become hate very quickly, and hate with evidence is a powerful tool. Is that a warning? It is advice. When this is over, when your wife is in prison and Webb is dead or disappeared, you will need to decide what kind of man you want to be. Victor headed for the door. Revenge is satisfying, but it changes you. Make sure you can live with changes. He paused at the door. Tomorrow night, 9 o'clock. Be here, but stay away from windows. When phone rings, do not answer. Let her believe plan is proceeding. Victor, I called as he opened the door. Thank you. Thank me when your wife is in handcuffs. The next evening, I sat in my office trying to focus on actual work while waiting for Sandra's call. Victor had given me a small receiver so I could listen to their conversation, and the device sat on my desk like a malevolent spider. At exactly 9:15, it crackled to life. Victor, Sandra's voice slightly breathless. I am here. Is it done? Is he... There were complications. A pause. Then Sandra's voice, sharp with panic. What kind of complications? Security guard made unexpected rounds. I had to pull out. Target is still alive. Damn it. I could hear Sandra moving around, probably pacing. When can you try again? Tomorrow night, same location. But price has increased. Increased? We had a deal. The deal was for simple job. Now there is additional risk. I want other half of payment tonight, plus 50,000 bonus. 50,000? I don't have 50,000. Then perhaps you should ask your boyfriend for loan? Another pause, longer this time. When Sandra spoke again, her voice was different, harder, more calculating. Marcus said you might try to renegotiate. He said to tell you that backing out isn't an option. Is that threat? It's a fact. You took the contract, Victor. You finished the job, or Marcus finishes you. Victor's laugh was genuinely amused. Your boyfriend thinks he frightens me? He should. You don't know what he's capable of. I know exactly what he is capable of. David Chen, Robert Martinez, Jennifer Thompson. Should I continue? Silence on Sandra's end. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. How do you know those names? I know many things, Sandra. I know about insurance fraud. I know about forged signatures. I know about previous homicides. Victor's voice turned cold. Question is, what are you willing to do to keep me quiet? What do you want? Meeting. Tonight, you, me, and Marcus. We discuss new terms. Marcus won't like that. Marcus will like prison less. Another long pause. I could almost hear Sandra's mind racing, trying to figure out how much Victor knew and how much trouble she was in. Where? She finally asked. Warehouse District, Pier 47, midnight. How do I know this isn't a trap? Because if I wanted you dead, Sandra, you would already be dead. I want money, not corpses. The line went dead. I stared at the receiver, my heart pounding. In 3 hours, Sandra and her boyfriend would walk into a trap that would end with both of them in federal custody. My phone buzzed. Text message from Victor. FBI in position. Stay away from warehouse. We'll contact you when arrests are made. I leaned back in my chair and tried to process what was happening. In 12 hours, I'd gone from potential homicide victim to key witness in a federal investigation. My wife was about to be arrested for conspiracy to commit homicide. and I was about to become a very wealthy widower. The strangest part was how calm I felt. No guilt, no second thoughts, no last-minute urge to warn Sandra about what was coming. She'd made her choices, and now she'd face the consequences. I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. "Jim, it's Nathan Hartwell. I need you to meet me at the office first thing tomorrow morning. We need to discuss divorce proceedings and some criminal matters that are about to become public." Criminal matters? My wife just tried to have me taken out. It's going to be a very interesting week. Agent Sarah Mitchell called me at 6:30 a.m. "Mr. Hartwell, this is FBI Agent Mitchell. We met your associate, Victor, last night. Did everything go according to plan? Better than expected. We arrested your wife and Marcus Webb at the warehouse meeting. We also recovered evidence linking them to 3 previous homicides and approximately $2 million in fraudulent insurance claims." I sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. They confessed? Your wife did. When we played Victor's recordings and showed her the financial evidence, she broke down completely. Blamed everything on Webb. Said he forced her into it. Claimed she never wanted to hurt you. And Webb lawyered up immediately. But we have enough evidence to convict him without a confession. Victor's records are incredibly detailed. What happens now? We'll need you to come in for a formal statement. Your wife will be charged with conspiracy to commit homicide, insurance fraud, and accessory to homicide in the first degree for the previous victims. She's looking at life without parole. Good. The word came out flat, emotionless. "Mr. Hartwell, are you all right?" "I'm fine, Agent Mitchell, just processing everything." "This must be incredibly difficult for you." "Actually," I said, surprising myself, "and it's not. Difficult would be spending the rest of my life married to a woman who was planning to homicide me. This is just closure." 3 hours later, I sat in FBI headquarters giving my formal statement. Agent Mitchell was professional and thorough, walking me through every detail of my marriage, Sandra's behavior over the past year, and my interaction with Victor. "You realize," she said, "that your quick thinking probably saved your life and helped us solve 3 other homicides?" "I realize that my wife is a sociopath who got involved with a serial butcher. About that, we're still investigating Victor's background. He claims this was his first contract in the United States, but we're not certain. Does it matter? He could have ended me and taken the money. Instead, he chose to help expose a homicide ring." Agent Mitchell made a note. "You seem remarkably calm about all this." "Agent Mitchell, my wife spent months planning my death. She forged my signature on legal documents, had an affair with a man who ends people for money, and was going to collect $5 million for my homicide. Being calm is the least of my concerns right now." "Fair enough. One more question. Do you have any idea where Victor might have gone?" "No, and I don't want to know. The man saved my life. As far as I'm concerned, he's earned his freedom." That afternoon, I met with my lawyer to discuss divorce proceedings. Since Sandra was in federal custody facing multiple homicide charges, the process would be complicated but straightforward. "The good news," Jim said, "is that she can't contest the divorce or claim any assets. Conviction for attempting to homicide your spouse pretty much voids any financial claims. And the insurance policy she forged? Voided completely. The insurance company is actually considering filing additional fraud charges." "What about the business? Entirely yours? She was never a legal partner, just a beneficiary on your life insurance." I signed the papers and walked out of the law office a free man. 12 years of marriage ended with a signature on a divorce petition while my wife sat in a federal holding cell. That evening, I drove to our house, my house now, and started packing Sandra's belongings. I wanted every trace of her gone before she made bail, if she even could. In her closet, I found the burner phone Victor had mentioned, along with records of her gambling debts and printed emails between her and Webb. She'd kept everything, probably as insurance against him. Among the papers was a handwritten note in Sandra's handwriting. Nathan's life insurance, $5 million, Victor's fee, $50,000. Marcus's cut, $2 million. My share, $2.95 million, finally free. I stared at the note for a long time. Finally free. That's what she'd written about my death. Finally free. I crumpled the paper and threw it in the trash. She was right about one thing. Someone was finally free, just not the person she'd expected. 6 months later, I sat in the front row of a federal courtroom watching my ex-wife's homicide trial. Sandra had aged years in the months since her arrest. Her hair was gray now, her face thin and drawn. She looked like what she was, a woman facing life in prison. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. Victor's recordings, the financial evidence, testimony from the families of Webb's previous victims, and Sandra's own confession created a picture of calculated, ruthless homicide for profit. Sandra's lawyer tried to paint her as a victim of Webb's manipulation, a vulnerable woman trapped in a controlling relationship who feared for her own life. The jury wasn't buying it. Agent Mitchell testified about the investigation, playing the recordings of Sandra discussing my homicide with Victor. When the jury heard Sandra laughing about finally being free after my death, several of them looked physically ill. The defendant, the prosecutor said in her closing argument, didn't just plan to homicide her husband. She planned to profit from it. She forged his signature on insurance documents, conspired with a known butcher, and celebrated the prospect of his death. This isn't a crime of passion or desperation. It's calculated, premeditated homicide for financial gain. The defense's closing argument was weak and desperate. Sandra's lawyer argued that she'd been coerced, that she'd never intended for anyone to actually die, that she was as much a victim as anyone else. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. On the charge of conspiracy to commit homicide in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of insurance fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of accessory to homicide in the first degree in the death of David Chen, we find the defendant guilty. The guilty verdicts continued for 20 minutes. Sandra collapsed in her chair sobbing. Her lawyer put a hand on her shoulder, but she shrugged it off. Judge Harrison scheduled sentencing for the following week. As the courtroom cleared, Sandra's eyes found mine across the room. For a moment, we stared at each other. The woman who'd planned my death and the man who'd helped send her to prison. She mouthed something I couldn't hear. It might have been, "I'm sorry," or "I hate you." I didn't care which. I walked out of the courthouse and never looked back. The sentencing hearing was brief. Judge Harrison had clearly made up his mind about Sandra's fate. "Mrs. Hartwell," he said, "you have been convicted of conspiracy to commit homicide, insurance fraud, and accessory to homicide in multiple cases. The evidence shows a pattern of calculated, ruthless actions carried out for financial gain." Sandra stood next to her lawyer, swaying slightly. She'd lost more weight and looked fragile, broken. "The court has reviewed your case thoroughly. While you may not have personally ended anyone, your actions directly led to the deaths of 3 innocent people and the attempted homicide of your own husband." Judge Harrison paused, looking directly at Sandra. "You have shown no genuine remorse for your actions. Your testimony during trial focused entirely on your own situation, with no regard for the victims or their families. You planned to profit from homicide, and you celebrated the prospect of your husband's death. Therefore, this court sentences you to life in prison without the possibility of parole on the conspiracy charges, to be served consecutively with 25-year sentences on each accessory charge. You will spend the remainder of your life in federal prison." Sandra's legs gave out. Her lawyer caught her as she fell, but she was beyond caring about appearances now. The woman who'd planned my homicide was going to die in prison, and we both knew it. As the bailiff led her away in shackles, Sandra turned back one last time. This time I could read her lips clearly. "I hate you." I smiled and nodded. After everything she'd done, her hatred was the least of my concerns. Outside the courthouse, Agent Mitchell found me on the steps. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Satisfied," I said. "Justice was served. Any regrets?" "Just one." I looked back at the courthouse. I regret that it took 12 years to see who she really was. "And Victor? What about him? Any word from him?" I pulled a postcard from my jacket pocket. It showed a beach somewhere tropical with crystal blue water and white sand. On the back, in Victor's careful handwriting, "Retirement suits me. Thank you for the bonus." "He's earned his peace," I told Agent Mitchell. "Some people deserve a second chance. Even butchers? Even butchers who choose to do the right thing when it matters." 2 years after Sandra's sentencing, I sold Hartwell and Associates and moved to a small town in Vermont. I bought a house on a lake, started a small consulting business, and began the process of rebuilding my life. The money from the business sale, combined with what I'd saved over the years, meant I never had to work again if I didn't want to. But work gave me purpose, and purpose kept me sane. I dated occasionally, nothing serious, just dinner and conversation with women who didn't know my history. I wasn't ready for anything more, and I wasn't sure I ever would be. Trust, once broken the way Sandra had broken it, doesn't heal easily. Sometimes I wondered about Victor. The postcard had come from somewhere in the Caribbean, but that didn't mean anything. A man with his skills could be anywhere by now, living under any name he chose. I hoped he was happy. He'd saved my life and helped put away a serial butcher. Whatever he'd done before our meeting, he'd earned redemption in my book. Marcus Webb had been sentenced to death for the previous homicides. He was sitting on death row, filing appeal after appeal, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. Eventually, the appeals would run out. I didn't follow his case closely. Webb was a predator who'd ended for money, and he'd gotten what he deserved. Sandra had chosen to involve herself with him, and she'd paid the price. On quiet evenings by the lake, I sometimes thought about the man I'd been before that night in my office. Nathan Hartwell, insurance agent, faithful husband, trusting fool. That man was gone, replaced by someone harder, more careful, less willing to take people at face value. Was it a better version of myself? I wasn't sure, but it was a version that would never again ignore warning signs or trust someone who didn't deserve it. 3 years after the trial, I received a letter from Sandra. It had been forwarded through my old law firm, and the return address showed a federal women's prison in Texas. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. "Nathan," it began, "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to try to explain." I stopped reading and threw the letter in the fireplace. Whatever Sandra wanted to explain, whatever justification or apology or plea for forgiveness she'd written, I didn't need to hear it. The woman who'd planned my homicide was gone from my life. The only thing she could give me now was her absence, and that was exactly what I wanted. I watched the letter burn and felt nothing but relief. 5 years after that night in my office, I was having dinner at a restaurant in Burlington when I saw him. Victor, sitting alone at a corner table, reading a newspaper and eating quietly. He looked different, tanned, relaxed, wearing casual clothes instead of the dark suit I remembered. His hair was lighter, and he'd grown a beard, but I recognized those cold gray eyes immediately. I debated whether to approach him. Our deal had been simple. He'd helped me expose Sandra's plot, I'd paid him for his services, and we'd gone our separate ways. Neither of us owed the other anything, but curiosity won out. I paid my check and walked over to his table. "Mind if I sit down?" Victor looked up from his newspaper, and for a moment I saw surprise flicker across his face. Then he smiled, a genuine smile this time, not the cold expression I remembered. "Nathan Hartwell, you look well." "So do you." I sat down across from him. "Retirement agreeing with you?" "Very much. I own small boat charter business now. Take tourists, fishing, diving, snorkeling. Very peaceful work." "Where?" "Belize. Beautiful country, friendly people, and they do not ask too many questions about past careers." "Good for you." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Victor folded his newspaper and looked at me directly. "How is your life? You remarried?" "No, not ready for that yet. Maybe not ever." "Understandable. Trust is difficult to rebuild." "What about you? Family?" "I have woman I care about. Local teacher, very kind. She thinks I am retired fisherman from Croatia." Victor smiled again. "In a way, she is correct." "Does she know about your past?" "She knows I was soldier, that I did things I am not proud of. She does not need details." Victor paused. "Some truths are better left buried." "I can understand that." Victor studied me carefully. "You are a different man than I met 5 years ago." "How so?" "Harder, more careful, less trusting." "Is that bad?" "It is realistic. World is dangerous place, Nathan. Better to see clearly than to live in comfortable illusion, even if it means being alone. Better alone and alive than trusting and dead." We talked for another hour about inconsequential things, the weather, the restaurant, his business in Belize. Neither of us mentioned Sandra or Webb or the events that had brought us together. As we prepared to leave, Victor handed me a business card. "Kozlov Charter Services," it read, with a phone number and email address. "If you ever want to visit Belize," he said, "I give good rates for old friends." "I might take you up on that. I hope you do." "And Nathan?" "Yeah? Thank you for giving me chance to choose different path. Not many people would have trusted Butcher to do right thing." "You weren't just a butcher, Victor. You were a professional who honored his contracts. When I gave you a better contract, You honored that one instead. Perhaps, but you saw possibility for redemption when others would have seen only threat. We shook hands and Victor walked away into the Burlington evening. I watched him go, thinking about second chances and the strange ways life brings people together. 6 months later, I booked a fishing charter in Belize. Victor met me at the dock, tanned and relaxed in shorts and a fishing shirt. His boat was clean and well-maintained, and he clearly knew the waters around Belize like the back of his hand. "Welcome to paradise," he said as we headed out to sea. We spent 3 days fishing, diving, and talking about everything except our shared past. Victor was a good guide and surprisingly good company. The cold, dangerous man I'd met in my office was gone, replaced by someone who'd found peace in a simple life. On my last evening, we sat on his boat watching the sunset, drinking beer and enjoying the silence. "Can I ask you something?" I said finally. "Of course. Do you ever regret it? Giving up your old life?" Victor was quiet for a long time, watching the sun disappear into the Caribbean. "I regret many things, Nathan. People I hurt, choices I made, years I wasted living in darkness." He turned to look at me. "But I do not regret meeting you. You showed me that there was a different way to live. I didn't do anything special. I just offered you a better deal. You offered me chance to be better man. That is a very special thing." The next morning, Victor drove me to the airport. As I prepared to board my flight, he handed me a small package. "What's this?" "Wedding gift. I'm not getting married. Not yet, but you will, when you meet right woman. And when you do, you will need this." I opened the package on the plane. Inside was a small digital recorder, similar to the one Victor had used to record Sandra's confession. There was a note attached. "Trust, but verify. Some lessons are worth remembering." I laughed out loud, earning strange looks from other passengers. Victor was right. Some lessons were worth remembering. But I hoped I'd never need to use his gift. 2 years later, I met Sarah Chen, a teacher who'd moved to Vermont to escape the stress of city life. She was kind, intelligent, and refreshingly honest about her past mistakes and future goals. We dated for a year before I told her about Sandra and the events that had brought me to Vermont. Sarah listened without judgment, asked thoughtful questions, and never once made me feel like damaged goods. When I proposed, I thought about Victor's gift, still sitting unused in my desk drawer. I'd learned to trust again, but I'd also learned the value of verification. Sarah had earned my trust through consistency, honesty, and time, the only ways trust could really be earned. We married on a beach in Belize, with Victor performing the ceremony as a licensed boat captain. It was a small wedding, just Sarah, me, Victor, and his girlfriend, Maria. As Victor pronounced us husband and wife, I thought about the strange journey that had brought me to this moment. A homicide plot had destroyed one marriage, but ultimately led me to another, better one. A hired butcher had become an unlikely friend, and a man who'd lost everything had found something better. "You may kiss the bride," Victor said, grinning. As I kissed Sarah, I heard Victor whisper to Maria in Spanish. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the sentiment. Sometimes the best things in life come from the worst situations. That evening, as Sarah and I watched the sunset from Victor's boat, she asked me about my friend. "He's not what I expected," she said. "What did you expect?" "Someone scarier, I guess. He seems so peaceful now. People can change given the right circumstances." "Is that what happened to you?" I thought about it. I think what happened to me was that I learned the difference between being trusting and being naive. Victor helped me see that distinction. And now I trust the right people for the right reasons. Sarah smiled and took my hand. "I'm glad I'm one of the right people. You're the rightest person I've ever met." As we headed back to shore, Victor started telling stories about his charter business, his life in Belize, and his plans for the future. He talked about buying a bigger boat, maybe expanding to include overnight trips, possibly writing a book about fishing in Central American waters. He never once mentioned his past as a butcher, and neither did Sarah or I. Some stories were better left untold, some chapters better left closed. But as I listened to Victor talk about his new life, I realized something important. Redemption wasn't just possible, it was inevitable for people willing to work for it. Victor had chosen to become a better man, and he'd succeeded. Sandra had chosen a different path, and she was paying the price in a federal prison cell. I'd chosen to rebuild my life based on hard-learned lessons about trust and verification. And Sarah had chosen to love a man with a complicated past, trusting that his future would be different from his history. We were all products of our choices, and we all had to live with the consequences. The difference was that some of us had learned to make better choices. As Victor's boat pulled into the harbor, I looked at my new wife, my unlikely friend, and the peaceful life I'd built from the ashes of betrayal and homicide. Sandra had been wrong about one thing. I was finally free, and this time it was the right person who'd been liberated.